So obviously, I'm going to talk to you how to differentiate your customer experience. But why differentiate on customer experience? So there's a report that Gartner actually published in 2014 that says, basically the new battle between companies is going to be customer experience. Because everything else, they could imitate. They could copy your product. They could imitate your customer support. They could, imitate everything else. But customer experience is very, very difficult to replicate. Okay, because it's how the customer feels about you. And when they actually did a survey, what they find is that with 300 companies that are of $1 billion revenue or more, and almost 90% of the CEOs agree that in the future, customer experience will be the new battle. It will be the ground at which you compete. Okay, so now, why is customer experience so important? Why do you think that's important? The simple answer is that it's actually very, very good for business. Okay, fortunately, there's actually already a company called Watermark Consulting. They did this analysis already. What they did is that they compare the leader in customer experience and the market average. They use standard, S&P average, 500 average. And guess what? The leader does better. And if they compare to the laggards of customer experience, they do worse. And the interesting thing about this company, Watermark, is that they did this analysis year after year after year, and they see the same result. This is 2021, right? And they did this 2019, they did this in 2015. It's the same pattern. They see this over and over again, okay? So now, hopefully, I've convinced you that customer experience is very important. Now, in 2013, and the reason is really simple. This man here is Paul Greenberg. He is essentially the father of, you call him the grandfather of CRM. Basically, he can explain this in a very simple phrase. Say, if you give customer a good customer experience, they will continue to do business with you. If you give them a bad experience, they would look for every opportunity to leave, even if they capture audience today, right? They will look for every opportunity to leave. Right? And Paul Greenberg, if you don't know him, he actually wrote the Bible of CRM, the CRM at Speed of Light. And so now, the real question for you is that what makes the experience good? What makes the experience a good customer experience? There's actually a lot of work in the industry trying to quantify customer experience. Some use Net Promoter Score or customer effort score. There's lots of ways that companies try to quantify what makes a customer experience good or bad. But they all fail to capture something. And really when it boils down to this one simple equation here, you just have to deliver more than what the customer expects, and they'll get a good customer experience, right? So in essence, what that means is that, customer experience is really just the difference between what the company deliver and what the customer expect. Okay? So in a picture, which is really, really easy to understand, is that if your customer expectation is at that level and you actually deliver at that level, you're actually going to get satisfied customer. And if you deliver more, you're going to get delighted customer. And if you actually deliver less, you're going to have, customer who complains, right? Who is disappointed. The problem today is not with how brands deliver their product or services. Because most company, if you existed for a long time, right? You've been delivering your product and services for, 50 years or something like that, 100 years or more, right? You know what you're delivering. The problem today is that customers' expectations have risen. Customers' expectations have increased, all right? So even though you are delivering the same thing you've been delivering, you're actually going to end up with not happy customer, okay? Going to end up with disappointing customer. So customer expectation is very dynamic and volatile, right? Think about, what happened when you're shopping for a product, right? And when you see, what the market, your competitor's product, right? All of a sudden, your expectation changes completely, okay? So it's very volatile. Okay, so now one very interesting question is, do you think it's easier to achieve a good customer experience in person, or is it actually easier to achieve that online? Who says in person? Who says online? Okay, it's quite equal. I'm surprised to see like this division here. Okay, so let's see what advantage each one of these have. Okay, so if you're in person, right, humans are actually very good at gauging customer expectation, right? We know what customer are actually looking for. You know, there's a commercial, a car commercial, you know, where this person goes from one dealer to another, right? And the car salesman figured out he just wanted cookies, and they actually gave him a bunch of cookies, and he's happy. Okay, so the humans are actually very, very, very good at determining what the customer wants. Do you want that upgrade? Do you want, you know, a discount? You know, we're very good at that, right? But what advantages online have? In online, the digital channels, you can actually access a lot more customer data that the salesperson may not have access to. Okay, so you say, well, you know, can we just use AI, right, to help me access all those data? Sure, you know, you can use AI to do that, but that's really the wrong way to use AI. That's what we call intelligent augmentation, right? It's really IA instead of AI, right? So you're using this data to augment your intelligence to engage with a customer, okay? Now, but the problem today is that like most customers are not visible to the brand, right? So if you think about how we shop, how we used to shop, you know, we used to shop in store, in person, right? But now, people are shopping with their mobile phone, with their devices, with their tablets, right? So you may never even see the customer at all throughout the entire lifetime of the customer, okay? So, and in the post-pandemic world, this digital adoption has been accelerated too, okay? So basically, you know, this is actually McKinsey who did this analysis. What they did is that they actually look at the online sales from 2009 all the way to 2019, right? It has a steady increase over time. But what happened when COVID happened? That happened, okay? You almost have like 10 years of growth that happened in 4 months. Everybody is shifting online, okay? Now, think about what happened when you shift to online, right? If you're a brick and mortar business and you all of a sudden become an online business, right? What happens then? What happened? Any guess? I want to make this very dynamic and interactive, so hopefully, yeah? Yes, exactly, right? Your market actually gets bigger. Your market opportunity become global, right? And that's a good thing. That's a wonderful thing, right? But the problem is that your competition is also very steep, right? Now you're competing with every single online business on the planet, right? So now, how do you stand out, right? How do you stand out from such a big competition, right? That's the question, right? So in this case, it's actually very instructive to learn from leaders of e-commerce, such as Amazon, right? And Amazon actually uses a lot of machine learning and AI in their every part of their service, right? Digital service. And there's actually, you know, if you listen to some of my talks before, right? There's actually 4 major categories of AI application. Now these are just a business kind of application, I would say, ways to kind of divide these AI and machine learning tools, okay? There's many different ways to classify these tools, but these are, I would say, business application, so major business applications, okay? So one is this perceptual AI, and the other one is internet AI, autonomous AI, and business AI. So let's talk about all of these, okay? Now, Amazon actually uses all 4 of these. So the first one is actually something that's, I would say, that everybody here probably have seen and understand, and that's Internet AI. So Internet AI basically is called Internet AI because it uses data that we left behind when we surfed the internet, okay? And it is sometimes called personalization AI because the main use case, the major use case is in personalization. Okay, and with Amazon, I'm sure all of you have seen their recommender system, right? The recommender system has a very long name. It's called people who bought this also bought that. That's a very long name, right? But they're the pioneer there, right? So I don't think I need to explain this anymore, right? Basically, this is, everybody has experience with that. But what it's actually doing in terms of customer experience, what they're doing is that they actually personalize your customer experience, right? People want things to be personalized. People want things, to appear as they want it, right? So you personalize your customer experience. So now the second class that we will talk about is this perceptual AI. So perceptual AI, sometimes they're called cognitive AI, ChatGPT, these are all perceptual AI, right? What they do is that they try to mimic the higher cognitive and perceptual function of a human being, such as vision, language, speech, all that's, what thought to be only, capable and achievable by human, right? But now machine can do them, so we call this perceptual AI, right? So with Amazon, probably know that they have a machine called, this speaker that's also a mic, right, called Alexa. Some of you probably have this at home. Now you can actually not only tell Alexa to, do things for you, you can actually tell it to order stuff for you, right? You could just tell it to buy something, and it will show up in your door, stop, next day. So it makes shopping a lot easier, right? So in terms of technology, right, this boils down to some kind of, I would say, chatbot or digital assistant, or some kind of vision system, right? So with this chatbot, right, or digital assistant, you have this Alexa, but Amazon also uses vision system as well. So this is a case where Amazon actually created this store that doesn't have a checkout line, okay? You just go in there, scan your QR code, get in there, pick up the item you want, and you just walk out. Okay, I actually experimented this with some of my friends, We go in, we deliberately try to make it difficult for the vision system, right? We go in there, I scan my QR code, and then two of my friends actually go in following me. And then we all go to different places, pick up different items. We try to put them in our bags and put them in our clothes to hide them. And then we each come out at different time. But after everybody came out, it gets every single item correctly charged to me, right? Very, very amazing. Think about what kind of problem it has to solve, right? It has to solve a lot of problems because the store can be crowded, right? There may be, two of the same, two guys wearing the same hat or same color shirt or something like that, right? It needs to really distinguish one person from another and what you actually picked up. And this person actually needs to be able to track. This is a very challenging problem, right? But it's solving what we call a customer problem, a customer pain point, right? Because nobody likes to wait in line to check out. It's solving a customer problem, right? Okay, so these perceptual AI, what does it actually do in terms of the experience of a customer? Well, it simplifies shopping, right? If you make shopping simpler, then people shop more, right? It's like credit cards. Credit card make buying stuff easier, simpler, right? So people buy more, they spend more money, right? So same idea. So basically, so let's go to the next class. So next class of AI or the Amazon leverage is autonomous AI. So autonomous AI is basically the AI behind the self-driving car, right? Today, the biggest application is the self-driving car, but tomorrow it could be driving robots or drones and so on, right? So now, Amazon is not building a self-driving car yet, not yet, okay? Maybe someday they will, but they are actually leveraging this type of AI in their warehouse, in their fulfillment center, right? So there are these kind of robotic arms that are, have some rudimentary levels of intelligence, right? They know how to avoid picking up a human. They know how to pick up only things that look like a box, right? But there are also these, I would say, these shuttle bots, right? These shuttle bots are extremely intelligent. They're almost like a miniature self-driving car, right? They can actually know how to avoid collision. They need to avoid. They know how to avoid human. They even know how to stay in their own lane, okay? So Amazons are using these to shuttle items in their fulfillment center to the human to be packaged, to be sent, right? It used before, humans have to go to the items and collect them, right? And the Amazon warehouse is actually very, very big. It's like, 2 or 3 football size. So if you want to get from one side of the warehouse to another side, it may take you half an hour, right? That's wasting a lot of time. So these robots are making it much faster for people to package the item to be sent out to the consumer, right? Okay, so now if you can actually, have these shuttle bots deploy in the warehouse, why not just deploy them out in the real world? Why not send them to deliver items to people's home? And Amazon's actually starting to experiment with that, right? They actually, they don't just send these delivery bots running, on the street. What they do is that they have an Amazon truck that brings a lot of these, delivery bots, and they will bring them to one location and then deploy them to bring the item to people's home, and then they will, when they come back to the truck, they drive them to the next location, right? So now, if they could do that, why not, deploy them in places? What do you do with places that are difficult that's not accessible by these delivery bots? So Amazon actually are testing drone delivery as well in some of the rural parts of UK. Okay, so these are autonomous AI, right? And what are they actually doing in terms of the customer's experience? What they do is that they actually automate these logistics, right? These are logistics that are typically done by these, I would say, machine that doesn't have any intelligence to it, right? But basically, these autonomous AI is giving you some kind of levels of intelligence, so they know how to not crash or run into trees or buildings and so on, right? So, and finally, I want to talk about business AI. So business AI is sometimes called decision AI as well, right? Because the biggest use case for them today is to automate these business decisions. It's decision automation, right? So Amazon actually have a couple of use cases. So one is fraud prevention, right? So Amazon used to have a big team of fraud investigators. So with these fraud investigators, what they do is that they look at the transaction, right? It's a human effort, right? They look at hundreds and thousands of these transactions and then determine whether it's fraud or not. And once they determine it's fraud, then they actually recommend some action. Right? So they actually collected, Amazon, over the year, they collected a lot of this data from these people. And what they do is that they combine these data and then train a machine learning model to essentially, once you have a new kind of transaction, they will actually look at all the context and make a recommendation to see whether this looks like a fraud or not. Okay? So this is a simple, classic machine learning problem, right? But then, what are they going to do with these fraud investigators? Amazon don't just fire them all, right? Because that would be bad, right? So these fraud investigators now, they just look at the results and see whether they actually agree or not, right? So this is actually human in the loop learning, right? And then if actually do agree, then the model knows that it's actually doing a good job, right? So this is the reinforcement learning, right? That we see before. Another use case that Amazon has is dynamic pricing. Right? Amazon has hundreds of millions of products, right? With their attributes, different attributes of the product, and they also have a price on them, okay? When they actually put these prices, historical prices out, right, the consumers are deciding whether to buy them or not, right? So the consumers are actually making a decision whether they want to buy this product based on the description, and all the different attributes of the product. So taking all this data, right, they basically can actually train another model, right? Now, if you have a new product, based on the description and the attribute of that new product, right, basically they can actually recommend a price. Now, basically they could put this price in the market and test it again, right, to see whether it's actually a good price. And finally, this is, if it's a good price, if they actually buy, then this is actually a feedback loop that closes then and teaches the model that it's actually the right thing to do, right? And Amazon actually reprice their product approximately every 10 minutes, every single product. there's no pricing team in this world that can actually keep up with all the changes. So what they do is that they actually just, look at all the very dramatic changes, like price change that are more than 25% or more than 50%, right? And they actually look at them and say, does it make sense to increase the price so much or change the price so much, right? And when you actually talk to them and say, when you actually talk to them, we ask them, like, what if you miss something? And they say, like, we don't really care if we miss something, because if we miss something, it's only going to be around 10 minutes. The next 10 minutes is going to get repriced. Okay, so even if you make a mistake, right, you don't lose very much, because you only, for example, if you set the price too high, right, most likely you're not going to sell that product, right, because the price is too high, right? You're just not going to get any sales in the next 10 minutes, right? And then the model is going to know that its price is too high and readjust up those price. Okay, so that's business AI or decision AI, right? So what it's actually doing is that it's actually optimizing decisions, right? So traditionally, there's actually human pricing analysts to look at all these products, right, and actually determine what the price should be, what the market price should be, right? Now this AI is actually not only automating it, but actually optimizing it, okay? All right, so now what do these AI do in terms of the customer experience, right? So obviously personalizing the customer experience, right, will increase personalization, right? It makes the experience much more personalized, right? But what about the other AIs, other classes of AI, right? So in the case of the perceptual AI, it reduces customer resources. It makes it simpler for them. It requires less effort and less time for them to actually buy, right? It reduces the resource investment from the customer. Same thing as autonomous AI. You have to wait less time, right? It's a less time investment, right? And finally, here with the decision AI, with the business AI, right? It also reduces your customer resources as well. Think about, why do people shop? Why do people shop? Why do people go online? And whether it's online or offline, why do you shop? You shop because you want to look for the right price, right? But if I could offer you the price that's perfect the minute you actually see the item, most people would just buy, right? And this is especially the case in the B2B scenario, right? In the B2C world, right, consumer will always want the lower price, right? But in the B2B world, a lot of people would just buy if it's the right price, right? So it actually reduces the time that's needed for people to shop. You don't have to waste time to shop for the right price, okay? And it also increases the personalization as well, because the price that is offered is now the right price that you would offer, that a business would offer, right? Okay, so now the best customer experience is really the one that's actually most personalized, but also require the least customer investment of resource, okay? Right? People want things to be personalized, but very often it is the case that you need to spend some time or some effort or some resources to get that personalization, right? You need to customize what you need, what you like, right? But what Amazon is doing with all these AI and ML technology is that they actually could personalize that for you without you investing more, right? Okay, so basically now we can actually know that the optimal customer experience is actually the one that actually is most personalized, and the customer resource investment is actually minimized. Okay, so when you're dealing with this invisible customer, it's very important to let AI do what it's supposed to do, is to let AI automate this experience, right? So now, so the question is, how do you start doing that? How do you start? Where do you start? Okay, so I've developed an AI adoption maturity curve. This is just from a lot of the work that I work with companies and doing some consulting works as well. And so this adoption maturity curve has 6 different stages. The first stage is digital transformation. Digital transformation is something that you heard a lot. Every company is doing some form of digital transformation because it's the first stage for this AI adoption maturity curve, because It's all about generating the raw data for your machine learning and AI, right? If you have a process that is not digitized, right, then you don't have data to train your AI to mimic what humans actually do, right? So the first step is digital transformation. Is basically you digitizing the work so that you actually, your physical work become digital work. That means the process and every step of it and all the decisions that you make are captured in the form of digital data, which you can use to train the AI to mimic what humans actually do in those situations, right? And when you actually do that, company typically go through like 3 different stages. The first is what we call descriptive analytic. First thing that companies run into when they do digital transformation is they have lots of data. So the first thing they do is that they just summarize those data, right? Because no one can actually look at all the data. So what they do is that they just summarize it. So this is done by descriptive analytic. And this is just basically any dashboard, any kind of report that you see is probably some kind of descriptive analytic underneath it, right? And once you actually have enough of these data, right, you can actually build some kind of model that can actually predict the future trend of these these metrics that you're actually measuring, right? So then you go into what we call the predictive analytics. You're going from purely descriptive, just summarizing the data, to using those data to make a forecast, make a prediction of what will happen, right? So now, the next thing that company actually do is that like, well, being able to predict is great, but sometimes that's not good enough. And especially when there's your action space is huge, okay? If I tell you the world's going to end tomorrow, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? There's millions of things that you could do, right? But if I say that, to maximize your chance for survival, you need to buy and store canned foods or build bunkers and stuff like that, or hide in the basement, then there's something that's very tangible, very actionable, right? If there's having, I would say, a predictive analytic is great. Don't get that wrong. But sometimes it's not good enough in the business world, right? Business, they actually need to know what to act and how to act. And sometimes predictive analytic is actually not very actionable, okay? So the next thing the company go through is what we call predictive analytics. Prescriptive analytic, right? The next stage beyond prescriptive analytic is prescriptive. They will prescribe you some actions to do rather than, just telling you what the future is going to be like, right? I'm telling you, not only telling the future, but I'm telling you what to do to optimize some kind of outcome, right? Okay, so now, once you're able to do prescriptive analytics, you're ready to move on to the next stage of this AI adoption maturity curve. Next stage is what we call exchanging data for automation. This is actually the first stage that most companies have to deal with AI and machine learning, right? Basically, now they have a bunch of data, right? Keep in mind that now they have enough data, they could actually prescribe some action for them to optimize some kind of decision, some kind of outcome, right? If you could optimize some kind of decision, why don't you just automate that? Why don't you just automate that, right? The classic example is that a GPS navigation system is a very simple prescriptive analytic system that we are all very familiar with every day. We use it all the time, right? What is actually telling you to do? If you tell me you want to go from A to B, they will prescribe you a sequence of action getting from A to B, right? So that is a prescriptive analytic tool that we use all the time. But if it's already able to tell you what to do to get from A to B, the next step is they could just automate that, right? That's what a self-driving car does. It's automating those actions and decisions to bring you from A to B, right? Okay? So this is usually now, I would say, used a lot in these point decision automation, right? So for example, like what price to set your product, how long to run your marketing campaign, who do you target in your marketing campaign. So all these are decisions that normally have to be decided by some like human experts who have some knowledge in the domain, right? And now, if you actually have enough data on how they make those decisions in the past, you can actually train a machine to mimic those decisions of a human, right? And now it could just automate it for you. All right? Okay, so obviously this probably is not going to be very good initially, right? So when you actually do this, the decision that they make is based on basically the available data that you have, right? It probably won't capture every scenario that you will encounter in the business world, because business changes all the time, right? So the next stage is what we call learning from humans, right? This is the human in the loop learning, right? So this is a stage where, humans are constantly giving feedback to these AI and machine learning systems to improve their algorithm, to make them essentially teach them how to deal with these edge cases that you have never seen before, where you have very little data of, right? If you don't have data to train the machine how to respond and how to behave in those scenarios, they're not going to know how to respond when they actually encounter that scenario, right? So basically, human will have to take over, right, and say, okay, now this is what I would have done, right? But guess what? You already have digital transformation, right? So as a human is actually doing it, you're capturing data again, and you're actually essentially teaching this machine how to behave, right, in this situation that you have never seen before. All right? Okay. So the next stage is essentially this, what we call full automation and job shift, right? So as you can see that as you do this stage 3 over and over again, right? It's learning from human to deal with all the different edge cases, right? Pretty soon, your machine is pretty good, right? You can actually deal with pretty much all the edge cases you could ever see, right? So what does humans do? What do humans do then? We shift our job, right? We just automate it, right? So this is a situation that's actually not too different from the situation of, for example, you hire an intern or hire a new employee, right? You train those intern and new employee to do what you do. What happens when they are able to perform your task? You basically promote them, right? To take over your job. And what do? You shift your job. You become a manager, right? Right? There's nothing to be afraid that it's going to, displace your job, right? You just move on to something bigger, something more meaningful, right? Something more strategic, right? Okay, so stage 1 to 4, these stages are typically internally focused. They focus on, I would say, the internal operation of the business, right? There are actually some use cases in customer support that could start as early as, in stage 3, okay? So for example, they have a chatbot that actually do customer support. They answer questions that customer call in about their product, right? So, but then the thing is that humans have to be there to take over if the machine's actually not able to resolve the problem, right? Otherwise, you end up with a poor customer experience again, right? So there are some use cases, but generally they tend to be internally focused. And when you actually get to beyond stage 4, right? This machine is actually pretty good, right? It's able to handle pretty much all the situations that you could ever see, right? And the humans actually allow it to fully automate and operate by itself, right? So stage 5 is this last mile delivery, right? Last mile delivery actually involves a lot of use of autonomous AI using robotics, right? To deliver the product and services to the end user. This is the final step. I mean, in the digital world, we could do a lot of things. We could shop, we could customize a product, we could have it shipped to us, right? But eventually, that product had to be shipped to us, right? You can't download, a mouse, right? A clicker. I mean, when you buy a meal, when you order a meal online, you can't eat it digitally, right? That's not going to happen anytime soon. So somebody had to bring that to you, right? If you order someone to clean, make an appointment for someone to clean your window, someone have to come to your home and clean that window, right? So these are I would say the last mile delivery. A lot of it actually, if it's already in the digital world, this is definitely, I would say, very easy to be accomplished. But a lot of time these actually involve things and actions and tasks in the physical world. So those need to be essentially be performed by robots in the future, right? All right, what's the last stage, right? So last stage is essentially what we call an AI augmented economy, right? So if you have these, in this world, right, where you can have essentially machines can operate and interoperate and talk to each other, negotiate and do business, right? Basically, we are in a very different world then, right? Maybe the world can operate so efficiently that, people do not need to work, right? I'm not saying that people will not work, right? They may still work if they like to work, but they may not need to work for survival, to survive, right? There may be enough efficiency that, people could, they would generate enough, I would say, value that the government can actually provide something called the universal basic income for everybody, right? So people do work that they're truly passionate about and not do work just because they need to do it for survival, right? So, okay, so these are the 6 stages of kind of AI adoption maturity, right? So now, this adoption journey actually is full of challenges, okay? There are lots and lots of challenges along the way. Lots and lots of challenges, right? So if you heard like anything about business, that they can only deal with like 3 to 5 things at once, right? This is actually way too much for any business to deal with, right? So what I did was like, I basically say if all along this journey, if you were to only solve 2 problems, what would those be? Okay, so at the beginning of digital transformation, a lot of it is actually alignment of your team, and it's a build versus buy decision, right? And I think a lot of people understand that, because this is something that business people do very, very often. And when you actually, the first stage where you actually exchange data for automation, because this is the first time that people have machine make decision on their behalf, right? I'm letting a machine to make decision for me, right? Instead of me. So this is something that, brings up the issue of trust, right? How can I trust the AI, right? If I'm going to let it make decision for me, I better trust it a lot, right? If I'm going to let an AI make decision for example, invest for me or drive me home, right? I better trust it enough to not lose all my money or bring me home. You have to trust it enough to bring me home safely, right? Otherwise, I'm not going to do it, right? So, okay. So this is a lot of times, this is where the adoption challenges is very challenging, okay? Because, it's the first time we have to learn to give up our control on the final decision-making power to a machine. Right, so adoption is an issue here. Now, the next stage is basically, data privacy and feedback usage. Right, learning from human sounds easy, but it's actually not that easy, especially when you have privacy concerns. Right, how do you learn from human without violating people's privacy? Right, and this feedback usage is also not as trivial either. Right, because I was just talking to someone from the insurance business. Right, this is I think AXA team is here. So, so feedback, most of the time when you're actually in school, when you learn machine learning, right, all the training data is there. But in the real world, the training data may not be there. What are you training? I mean, how do you know if an insurance policy is a good insurance? You may not know until much, much later, right? If you're talking about a life insurance, you may not get the answer until the person dies. Right, which may be 30, 40 years later, right? So that's not a trivial problem, right? How do you actually use those feedback, right? And they may not, when they're not available. So when you actually go to this stage 4, this full automation and job shift, right? There's a lot of problem obviously with human resources, right? What do you do with those humans when you actually, shift them, when you actually have full automation, right? And obviously, when you actually shift the job to a machine, when the machine is actually doing that fully automated, who's accountable if something happened, right? If you make a decision, a wrong decision for business, right? For example, a pricing decision. If you price something wrong and now nobody's buying the product, who's accountable? Because the machine is doing that, right? There's no one person who's actually making those decisions. Who's accountable, right? So that's actually a problem there, right? So not last year, but the fifth stage, when we actually deal with the last mile delivery, right? There's a lot of problem with ethics and legal, right? How do you actually deal with, when you have robots running around the street, right? Do you want to run over an old lady or a young boy, right? Those kind of decision comes in when you have these hypothetical scenarios. Those are not easy decisions to make, right? Comes down to ethics. It turns out that different countries actually have different, standards. There's actually people who study this and said, in Europe, some people favor women, or some people favors young children or old people, right? So different regions of the world actually have different standards on this. These are actually not easy. And finally, when you actually have this AI augmented economy, the biggest problem that will come up is equality. Because now, anytime you have this technology, right, the haves and have-not create this huge gap, right? Those business that have those technology, have access to those technology, is going to be able to outperform those who don't dramatically, right? How do you have equality? I mean, we already see this today, right? For example, data scientists and engineers, they in the Bay Area where I'm come from, I'm from San Francisco, so they make so much more money than anybody else in the Bay Area. That is kind of unthinkable, right? It's a little bit kind of inflated a little bit, so it's created a lot more, I would say, inequality, right? So, and that often can lead to problem, right? So there's a lot of societal impact that we probably have not even thought of, right? And with this AI augmented economy, and we need to think about that. Okay, so keep in mind that in the early stage of this adoption journey, that a lot of these problems are, I would say, business management problem. As you move on to the kind of middle stage, right, these become data science or governance problem. And as you move to even the later stage, these become human behavior and psychology problems. And finally, when you actually move to the last few stages, these are legal, ethic, and even philosophical problems that very often data scientists don't know how to solve, okay? So data science will be a very interdisciplinary discipline in the future, right? Especially when you're dealing with these AI and machine learning systems. So keep in mind, these problems actually exist. All of these problems exist throughout this entire journey, right? I'm just saying that if you're a business that can solve all these problems at once, great, solve them all, right? But if you can't, these are at different stages, right? These are probably the best time to solve those solutions, right? To solve those problems, because they're have obvious benefit for those stage. Okay, so the question is, where are most companies today? Where are most companies today? Where do you think they are? Yeah, so most companies are still struggling with the digital transformation, right? And I would say that quite a few companies now are actually adopting AI and machine learning solutions for point solutions, right? So this is where I would say this, AI adoption, AI trust and adoption is the biggest problem. Because very often, to give customer a good customer experience, not only you need to have consumer-facing AI or machine learning product and services, company have to operate differently too, right? Inside the company, they also have to leverage AI to operate a little differently, okay? So now, because this is the first stage that, as I said before, right? This is the first stage, the first time that humans have to give up their power or their control of the final decision, right, to a machine. So it's actually very, very uncomfortable for a lot of companies, right? For consumer, this is usually not a problem. But for a company, this is actually something that they're not used to, right? So very often when you have an AI technology that's actually used by a business owner, right? So most of those decision AIs that I talk about, those business AI, they are called business AI because they're used by business users, right? They're called decision AI because they're often automate some kind of business decision, right? Very often people don't use them, right? Very often people are reluctant to use them. One is maybe because of fear, okay? Because if I use a system and actually I made a wrong decision, right? Am I going to get fired, right? And there's also like I would say a fear of kind of losing control, right? If the AI is actually doing that, what am I here for? Why do they need me? Okay, so very often people in the business world, even though you have those AI technology, even though you could prove and demonstrate the superiority of their decision, very often business don't adopt. This is a problem, right? So, so as you see, there's actually a lot of, I would say, challenges along this journey. I won't have time to go through every one of these topic with you. That's much longer courses. But I will just talk about one of these, okay? So today, I will actually show you how to drive mass AI adoption within the enterprise, okay? Which is something that you probably have to deal with if you are trying to, if you have an AI solution that's actually used by business user. Okay, so throughout the course of my consulting career, I have developed basically an enterprise kind of technology adoption kind of a strategy, okay? It's actually works. It's not specific to AI. It actually works, back in the age when social media is very popular, or gamification when they're really popular. So it's actually an enterprise technology adoption strategy, right? And it actually works very well for AI as well, okay? So now this AI adoption strategy has essentially 3 phases, right? Imagine, say, these are everybody in your company that you're trying to drive them to use this AI technology, okay? Say it's some kind of sales automation. Let's say these are the salespeople of your company, your sales department, right? You're trying to use this AI-driven sales automation tool, okay? And within any company, there's always, I would say, stellar performers. These are the top sales guys, okay? So we're going to label them with a star, so to label that they are the top salespeople, they're stellar performers. And there's always some people who are, I would say, excited about AI, right? So we're going to color these with orange, right? It's the same color as the AI there, right? And there's also some people with different levels of motivation or enthusiasm for AI, right? Some people are kind of say, I'm somewhat excited about it. I'm not sure if I'll use it, right? Some people are actually afraid, right? Some people say, am I going to lose my job? Or if I make a wrong decision, what will happen, right? So some people are literally scared, okay? So now, the first stage of this AI adoption strategy is what we call a secret pilot, okay? Secret pilot is called a secret because, it's not made public to the rest of this sales team. It's a secret, right? And the thing is, how do you actually select the people in this secret pilot program, right? The secret pilot is actually designed for success, right? Because you actually pick the people who are stellar performers already, but who are also enthusiastic about AI, to learn about AI, right? Okay, so now the reason you want to do this secret pilot, typically they're pretty small team because, the stellar performers within your company, they're typically a pretty small group, right? You don't have everybody. Usually, not every single one of them is going to be the top sales. There usually will be a few, top salespeople, right? And you have to find the people who are the top sales, who are also interested and enthusiastic about learning to use this AI tool, okay? So that's going to be an even smaller group, right? So, and it's actually a good thing to be small because it's easier to kick off, right? And there's also less disruption if something goes wrong, right? And now, with every technology deployment that I work with, right, there's always some problem. There's always some problem that you just cannot imagine, okay? So there's every technology deployment, there will always be some hiccups, okay? And with this secret pilot, you contain the damage, right? Because the rest of the team don't know about it, right? They don't have to know about it, right? And they also give you time to basically perfect this rollout process, right? So it give you time to work out all these hiccups so you don't have this problem anymore, right? You address them, right? So now, once you actually address all the these problems on your deployment process, right? Then because these are already stellar performers, and they also have the help of this AI and machine learning technology, what will happen? They will become even more amazing performers, right? They're going to they're going to be able to achieve something that's humanly impossible, right? So that's when you actually move into phase 2, right? The phase 2 is what we call recognition and socialization, right? Now, no more secret, right? The secret is out because now these people are obviously, performing. If they're salespeople, right, they're going to probably close some of the biggest deal that the company have ever seen in their entire history, and probably close more deal than ever possible, before, right? So now it's also a way for these leaders in the company to recognize them, right? Recognize them and also tell people that, hey, you know what? They're able to achieve this humanly impossible performance because they also have the help of AI, right? Or machine learning, right? So now you create this kind of recognize their performance and socialize their success. And the interesting thing is that once you socialize their success, right? These people don't work in isolation, right? They have friends, they have colleagues in company, right? Word spread, right? Word spread. And the thing about that, as word spread, people actually become curious, right? They become curious. They become curious. They wanted to actually learn more about why are these people able to perform so extraordinarily well, okay? Because some of the, for example, if you're a salesperson, right? So you could say, I've been working in this company for 20 years. I cannot perform as this new guy here who just joined, right? And how is that possible, right? Because you become curious, right? So when you actually become curious, right, it's a good opportunity to essentially establish some kind of institute, some kind of learning or some kind of seminar, to educate people, right? So how good your leader create this kind of curiosity depends on how good you are with communication, right? So you need to create this curiosity to facilitate this kind of, I would say, learning, right? And finally, you want to create opportunities to learn more, right? When people are curious, that's when it's the best for them to learn new thing, right? So they could say, you know what, you can actually learn about how to use this AI to help you perform better in your job, right? So, basically over time, more and more people actually will have more and more enthusiasm, right? And then you go into phase 3, right? Phase 3 is what we call an opt-in gate. The opt-in gate is basically another kind of, I would say, mentoring program, right? The gate is called opt-in gate because there is a gate that's designed to be very narrow. That anybody can actually get in there into this program, but not everybody can get in at the same time. Okay? So who gets into this program in the beginning, right? Well, the secret pilot people are the first group, right? So now the next group that goes in, basically, you can actually use the same strategy, right? You create this exclusivity, right? Because you said that not everybody can get in. Now people become more curious. They say, I want to get in, because salespeople tend to be very competitive, right? So if you say they can't get in, they actually want it more, right? So you use this exclusivity to drive desire, and you also ensures proper training, right? Because not everybody can get in, right? Because now, if you say the next group that goes in, say these 3 people, right? They have a mentor, right? The 3 people who are in the secret pilot, they know how to use this system really well. they become the mentor of these new group that come in, right? So you ensure that people know how to use these technology, right? And the next group that comes in, now you can have, instead of having 3 people, now we can have 6 people, because now we have 6 people who know how to use system, right? Already. So you get this kind of, doubling every time, right? So which is exponential. So very quickly, it actually build a very large community of practice within your enterprise, right? So people know who to consult and who to go to when they have problem. Okay. Now, okay, and finally, I would say that this is as you get to this doubling every time, what you will eventually reach some kind of critical mass, right? When you reach this critical mass, then basically everybody will adopt, right? Once you reach some critical mass, nobody wants to be left behind, right? Nobody wants to, everybody's seeing everybody else is doing this. Nobody wants to be left behind, right? So everybody, once you reach this critical mass, everybody jumps on board, right? And it can be helped, right? Facilitated when you actually have education early, right? Basically, this is probably in stage 2, right? In phase 2, right? When people actually are being recognized and socialized about their success, this is actually the best time to have this education, right? And because, ultimately, what people are afraid of is actually not the AI itself. It's actually the fear of unknown. So if people actually understand how AI actually works, how AI could help them, they are actually less reluctant to adopt, right? It actually reduces fear. And finally, it also drive what we call the convergence of theory and practice, right? People can actually see, how, I would say, the practice, the theory of AI, right, in theory, how they actually translate to performance of their colleagues and their friends, right? Which is real, right? It's not just I theorize this, I'm going to say this is going to work. It actually works, right? People could see that. Okay, so this is actually how do you drive mass enterprise AI adoption within a company. So this is only one of the stage. There's actually a lot more challenges, but I won't have time to cover that. But this is actually the first step. So I think if you get through this step, you will have more opportunity to address the future problems later. All right, this is all I have. Thank you. Yeah.